Hello and welcome to tonight's edition of the Evening Review. My name is Toivan Jabela and I am your host for tonight. Let's look first at the front page of today's Namibian Sun. That is our today's front page of Namibian Sun, coronavirus being the biggest subject on the front page of not only our paper but all other dailies today. And speaking of that, we have in this edition the Executive Director of the Ministry of Health and Social Services, Ben Nangombe, speaking to us about this virus and government's preparedness. But before that, our reporter Kenya Kambowe in Rundu spoke to Berthold Wakudumo, also on the subject of coronavirus, which gives us an impression really on what people in the regions are taking the news. This is their conversation.
Mr. Wakudumo, can you briefly just tell us how you felt when you heard that Namibia has 2 confirmed cases of coronavirus?
I felt very bad. Because it's a very dangerous disease that is circulating around, and it's spreading very fast. The way it's spreading, it's a fast disease. So far we have not heard there's a cure about it, so it's a fear to the country since our population is also very less.
Okay, and in terms of the people around you, I'm sure you might have engaged people after this. What is the feeling? Are they in a panic mode or are they still calm?
No, the majority is in a panic mode. Okay. Most of the people are starting to lock themselves into and they are isolating themselves from others.
Okay, and with news that as you are still waiting for the education ministry to issue a statement as to what was going to happen regarding the schools, and knowing that Rundu has a high population of learners in school, what would you suggest?
We suggest it's best, like the president said, it's gonna be better for the next 30 days for people not to associate themselves into a lot of groups. It will be easier if we can cut off the schools, then people remain at home, where there is a few number of people at home.
Okay, and looking at our border, we are in Rundu right now, and you know that the Angolan border and the Namibian border is very close by, and most of our neighbors, they usually come into this town of Rundu. Is there what would you call on the ministry to do in terms of the border?
We would request the ministry to close off the borders. Mainly, they should be close to the riverside, because that's where people are sneaking in to come in, mostly at night time. Yes. Or during the day. They use the river. Okay,
and maybe just a final message to other fellow Namibians. What do you think? What do you know about the coronavirus, and how should one protect himself from it?
It's easier. It was said apparently we should wash our hands after every 20 seconds and not touch our face.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Pleasure.
Good evening and welcome to this segment where I'm joined in the studio by the Executive Director in the Ministry of Health and Social Services, Mr. Ben Nangombe, who has been at the top of this whole current wave of coronavirus and related matters. Ben, thank you very much for your time.
You're most welcome.
Yeah. Give us the latest update. I know that over the weekend there were a lot of announcements from the ministry. Your minister actually spoke. State House also made some announcements, but has there been any new development since then that you can share with us?
Basically, as you indicated, the president has made broad policy announcements. Yeah. And these announcements have got serious implications. Yeah. And the president tasked the ministers and the technical officials to put modalities in place in order to operationalize those policy pronouncements. So immediately after the announcement by the president, ministers and technical officials had started to work. On Sunday, which is yesterday, the National Health Emergency Management Committee, which was expanded to include other stakeholders, met for a lengthy period of time in order to thrash out these modalities. And the aim for that was to then give specific detailed recommendations to the Cabinet Committee on Defense and Security, which would then further brief the president in order for the final decisions to be taken as in terms of what is going to be done at the national level by all institutions of government and possibly in the private sector.
Okay. How is the condition of the Romanian couple that tested positive?
Yeah, the Romanian couple tested positive. They started receiving medical attention. They are currently at an isolation facility where they are continuing to receive medical attention. They are doing well, and we hope they will continue to be in good health.
Okay, so again, I know that there is a lot of privacy around this couple, but when a situation like that comes up, who handles their treatment? Is it the state? Are they in the private care of some private practitioners? How does it work?
They are currently being attended to by state medical professionals. Okay,
and how would it? Of course, we do not wish that more cases come up, but what would be the way forward if new cases come up? Who will be handling those?
No, we have put modalities in place. Our health facilities, from the referral hospitals here in the capital to district hospitals in the regions, modalities are in place in order to be able to handle issues as they arise. And yes, this is a public health emergency, and the state health system is geared to be able to handle the situations as they arise.
Okay, so when you talk about modalities, we see other countries, of course, they have maybe better capabilities, and some like China and others, they have set up facilities specifically just for this kind of purpose. Is that sort of the idea that we're also exploring, or what kind of modalities do we have in place here?
What has been done so far, for example, you must have heard that the Ministry of Defense, together with the Ministry of Health and Social Services, have deployed a field hospital with a capacity of about 14 beds at the Jose Akutago International Airport. There was an existing isolation facility also at the Jose Akutago International Airport, and our district hospitals in the regions have been instructed to make sure that there are facilities available to be able to handle cases as they come in order to be able to respond effectively to this emergency.
And talking of that facility at the airport, what does it do? Is it for confirmed cases only, that once a case is confirmed, then people can be accommodated in that facility, or how does it work?
The whole question is the condition in which a particular person may find themselves in after having been confirmed as positive for COVID. So the isolation facility at the airport, particularly the military field hospital, is a class 2 facility, and that indicates the extent to which capacities exist within that facility. So it can be capacitated to handle almost all types of cases, and for that reason a decision is made by clinicians as to where a particular patient will be admitted depending on their health condition.
Okay. Ben, walk me through there are a lot of questions around the Romanian couple, particularly how they went through our systems at the airport without being detected. Are the scanners working? Can they be relied upon? Can we? What happened there?
The methodologies and the standard operation procedures that Namibia is using to screen arriving passengers at our borders are standard operating procedures that are being used internationally. the equipment that we are using to test, or to rather to screen passengers at the airports, are equipment that are being used at other airports and ports of entry around the world. I'm not a clinician, but what my doctors have told me is that in order to, because the thermograms, you test the temperature of the individual, right? If the person has a high fever of higher than 38 degrees, then we can suspect that this person may be infected with the coronavirus, in addition to other symptoms. For example, it's not a high fever, it's a dry cough, it's difficulty breathing, and so forth. So that is what is done. But it can also be said that, because this is just screening, it's not necessarily testing. The screening may not pick up the fever if a person, for example, the person may have taken some medication which caused their body temperature to be low. Or it could be that by the time the person arrived, the virus in the body has not gone to the extent to which it rises the body temperature. So it is for that reason that some of these things may skip through. That is why what is done in addition to the body temperature test, the port health officials do inspect a person, do look at a person to say, do they display particular symptoms? And if they don't, that is how they are then allowed to proceed. Okay.
The most pertinent question that that is on the lips of many Namibians is around this whole case. To say people were coming from Doha, and the public is wondering how many people were on that plane, how many disembarked in Namibia, who shared the plane for so many hours with this couple. In terms of tracing your tracing strategies to say who else was on that plane, and who are the people in Namibia locally, maybe the hotels or car rentals who might have gotten into contact with these people. What is the progress in that regard?
Yeah, again, the World Health Organization has put in place certain protocols in terms of all these issues of managing the coronavirus outbreak. That includes the contact tracing protocol. And once the case was confirmed as COVID positive, the case tracing, the contact tracing started immediately. It is for that reason that, for example, we were able to identify the persons who were working at the facility and so forth. And the contact tracing continues, going way back in contact with the airlines and other stakeholders who were involved in this process. So it goes on like that. It doesn't stop. The system is designed in such a way that we go back to all the people who were in contact with this particular person, so that they can be advised to self-isolate, to watch out for symptoms, and to seek testing if they should develop symptoms.
I had a question prepared here about self-isolation. Is that entirely a voluntary process? How do you monitor as the authorities that people are indeed, if I'm a suspected carrier of the virus, how do you monitor that I'm obliging to self-isolation?
There are two tracks here. For individuals who are known to have been in contact with positive cases, as much as they are advised to self-isolate, they are advised to self-isolate, but also this is supervised, meaning that health officials would actually from time to time go and monitor that these people are complying with the isolation order that they were given. For people who are, for example, just coming from affected countries, those are advised to self-isolate, but the numbers are big. The aeroplane coming from an affected country may be carrying 200, 250 people. So you don't have the capacity to monitor each and every person. But for those that are known to have been in contact with a positive case, they are subjected to a monitored self-isolation so that we try to minimize the potential spread of the virus.
The second last question, Ben, is again, what kind of conversations were the health authorities were having with government prior to the events of last Friday night leading up to now? Because there's been this feeling that we haven't been very proactive. There's a lot of things that we should have done earlier before the first cases registered. What do you say to having been proactive or not proactive as a country?
I think as far as preparedness is concerned, we have been preparing since the virus was announced around January. The National Health Emergency Management Committee was already activated, and the National Health Emergency Management Committee involves stakeholders from the various ministries, offices, and agencies that have got a role to play in this kind of preparedness. That is why already by the first week of February, we were able to deploy the military field hospital at the airport. So these preparedness exercises have been going on, whether it is with the Office of the Prime Minister, the Office of the President, and other offices, ministries, and the agencies, and also with our development cooperation partners like the WHO, CDC, and others. So we are as prepared as we can be in terms of putting the systems in place, but that doesn't mean that we cannot improve. We have communicated with our health officials, with our facilities, to make sure that any eventuality that arises, we are able to deal with it. Of course, we know that the resources are stretched. In terms of human resources, we are stretched, but we have been able to have a core of health professionals that are able to deal with this matter.
In financial resources, how is the situation?
You will also remember that, again, already at the beginning of the outbreak, when we started to prepare for this particular challenge, we already put in place a costed response plan. And already again in February, the Office of the Prime Minister, through the National Emergency Fund, or National Contingency Fund, had made available an amount of 11 million for us to start again putting measures in place. But that is not the end of it. As announcements are made, as policy pronouncements are made, including those that were pronounced by the President, they will have financial implications, and Cabinet is considering already in terms of what can be done to bring more resources on the table for the nation to be able to respond better.
Okay. The final question, Ben, is around the flights. On Friday, Air Namibia came out and said they're suspending their German flights, and I know that there are also some flights banned from Ethiopia and elsewhere. But what kind of message and instructions is government giving to other airlines flying here, your Qatars who are coming from Doha and elsewhere? Are they just let to voluntarily decide whether to cut these flights, or is there any imperative on them to stop coming here?
That is an issue that the government has looked at. And in fact, if you look at what the President said and the modalities that are being put in place to operationalize that decision, announcements will be made with respect to other airlines. In fact, I think you remember that already the announcement that the Ethiopian Airlines has been cancelled. I think even the Qatar Airlines and so forth. So these things, as the situation evolves, and I don't want to preempt what the Cabinet Committee of Defense and Security has discussed. So these announcements are going to be made at an appropriate time. The President's pronouncements are going to be operationalized, and we are not taking anything lightly. These things are going to be sweeping, they are going to have an impact on our country, but considerations are being made so that whatever decisions we take, government and the country does not shoot itself in the foot. So everything is being done with consideration of what impact it is going to have in terms of the economy, in terms of the way of life of the people, and so forth and so forth. That is, I'm saying, I don't want to preempt what is being discussed. That is beyond my pay grade. The ministers responsible who are tasked to do these things will issue the necessary statements.
Ben, thank you very much for coming, man. I appreciate it.
Welcome.
That was Ben Nangombe, the Executive Director in the Ministry of Health and Social Services, giving us the latest update as far as the coronavirus situation is in the country. Thank you for watching. Good night.